So April 17th, 2025. We just pulled the new antenna for the repeater out of its packaging. And we're inspecting it and all looks okay. Give you a close-up shot of the connector here. See the sun. There's the connector. Let's have a look at the label. And sealed in between sections pretty nice. And the end cap sealed up the same.
Yeah, it's pretty much dead nuts. 1-to-1 at 146.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Zoom in. It won't be in your way.
That's all the mounting hardware right there. The bolts, nuts, lock washers, Loctite, tower brackets.
A lot of work to do. In the meantime, we can always talk on the Kingston repeater, which is 147.255. Tuned in there. It's exciting stuff. Okay, enough with the promo. Let's take some check-ins. We're going to start today with short timers. Anybody who's mobile?
Gathered there, and we had a nice barbecue there. So anyway, I'm sure they got more hands than they need. Too many people up on the mountain make it too crowded to work. So.
Something.
I also have line. Yeah. I ran new fresh out of the box and I aligned the jaws while I was in the parking lot.
If you really want me to use yours, I don't.
It doesn't matter to me.
Our way back. Well, things are happening, Eddie.
Like a group's on their own. And we got a text, hey, the scooter bandits are back. And they're going to be, and they're going through dicks. So the police all set up outside of our parking lot in Chinsonville too.
Jesus.
And they come flying through. And I was like,
Okay.
think they put this up new, or you think they got one like 10 years old and just decided to? Yep.
No, over here. Need somebody to grab.
I don't think that was sealed anymore.
No.
There's no way.
Well, 30 years in the UV and the weather.
I mean, just look at the.
Yeah. So this is a snake skin that Dave just found. Some pretty good sized snakes up here. That was a monster. You know, coax everywhere, and then
No, he's not anything scary to worry about.
and then a big old black snake hanging out. Oh, he's going in though. Yeah, you probably shouldn't go in
Okay,
there.
so let's just pause for a moment, because I know most of the people watching this video probably aren't too familiar with radio frequency waves, their propagation, antenna characteristics, transmission line characteristics, all that sort of stuff. So, coaxial cable, which is basically the stuff that we're installing, is something called hardline. You notice it has that hollow tube up the middle. That kind of creates another skin effect. So I guess I got to pause and explain skin effect as I'm back here editing. So basically, skin effect is where most of the energy conducting at high frequency physics, so that you can kind of see a diagram here of how that works. You know, how there's very little current flow in the middle of the conductor, and at the outside edges, because of the eddy currents that are developed. If you want to learn more about this, you should look into electromagnetics, and especially electrical and magnetic interactions like generators, alternators, and the like. But just so you understand what skin effect is, side of the line that helps propagate signal, so it has it's less lossy, is what we say. So you could basically compare coaxial cable or transmission line regarding RF as sort of a pipeline to carry specific frequency wavelengths. Just like you would design pipeline to carry specific types of fluids. In this case, we're carrying specific types of frequencies. And there's a mathematical relationship for all of that, as you can see here in this diagram. And you can look this up. This is at rfcafe.com. References electrical coax. I can leave a link in the video. But this goes into all the different things that affect coax and how it performs. And one of the hugest factors in how a coax performs is the frequency that it's working with. And so different frequencies, and typically as you go in higher frequency, you need a higher quality coax with better shielding and better transmission conductivity, basically, in order to get your signal to propagate further and not have loss. So basically, if a coax is not designed well, it leaks a lot of your RF energy out on its way to the antenna. Instead of being transmitted to the antenna and resonating that antenna with that power is lost, usually in the form of heat along the way. So if you have a better coaxial line, you end up with better power transmission, and so the 30 watts, say, that you're putting out of the repeater gets to the antenna and performs better. And same with received signals. Received signals will be stronger that way as well. So I just wanted to stop and kind of explain what this is. And you can see here there are different equations for this stuff. And they look complex because they are. It's basically electronics. Anything electronics and RF propagation and wave-wise effectively is physics. And it's just kind of like physics at high speed and compared to the speed of light, for lack of a better way to describe it simply. But you notice down here we talk about reflection coefficient and VSWR. That's basically where we compare how much energy we send from the transmitter down the line to the antenna, and depending on how well tuned that transmission line antenna are to the transmitter's output impedance, if it's tuned perfectly well, we can get a 1-to-1 standing wave ratio, or SWR. And so as your efficiency of resonation with the antenna or frequency that you're transmitting goes down, your SWR will climb. Typical acceptable SWR ratios are like 1.5 to 1. On HF bands, it could be as high as 2 or 3 to 1, sometimes higher than that. But the higher you go, the less efficient that antenna is going to function, and the less capability you'll have for receiving the signals from longer distances or with better clarity. So effectively, the reason we use the hardline is because that is one of the most efficient, albeit quite expensive, types of coaxial cable you can use, and it's used in industry on repeater towers for commercial stuff and for commercial transmitters, and that, you know, so we put basically commercial gear on our amateur radio repeater, including a commercial antenna. That antenna we put up is a commercially built antenna designed for a commercial band, but it also covers our frequencies, or is tuned to our frequencies, and our repeater is at 146.805 megahertz. I guess that's just kind of a summary on coaxial lines and antennas without going very deep into a lot of explanations and math and such. But I just want people to have context for it. Okay, well, I decided to get out a book that I've had since I was 14, maybe 12. Been into radio and antennas for a really long time. And this is a very, very valuable learning tool. And I still go back to this today if I decide I want to build an antenna. So what we'll do is we'll go to page 2.5, where they talk about resonance of antennas. And they show a chart here of current flow and that sort of thing. So basically an antenna is very much like that of an ocean wave or an audio wave, except it's vibrating at a much higher frequency. So vibrating at a much higher frequency, we can't detect it with our ears or eyes, but when we send energy down a transmission line from a transmitter to an antenna, and if that antenna is tuned for that frequency, resonant with that frequency, will vibrate at that frequency, then that antenna can efficiently transmit that energy into the air and send it great distances. And if that antenna is not resonant with that frequency, and depending on how disresonant or discordant it is with that frequency, it will be very inefficient at sending energy out into the air. So that's the basics of it, and an ocean wave is probably an easiest example for a person to visually understand. If you had a shoreline that perfectly absorbed an ocean wave, in other words, it was close to flat, and that wave could just kind of settle out and dissipate across it. Efficient way of collecting that wave, right? Well, the same applies with an antenna. And if you have like a very steep shoreline, that wave, a big portion of that wave's energy would bounce off of that cliff and reflect back out into the ocean toward the waves that are coming in and crashing ashore. That's kind of a similar way to envision it, about efficiency of power transfer. So maybe I'll throw a picture of an antenna I built when I was 14. It's a quarter wave ground plane 2-meter antenna. And for those of you familiar enough to know how little power this is, I'm at 1 1/4 watts on my old ICOM 2AT.
I used to talk to my friend on a repeater down in Pennsylvania, Elk Mountain, Pennsylvania, 125 miles away. And we talked regularly that way with that antenna. So maybe I'll throw a picture of that up. And if I can find some pictures, my friend Dave, who you see doing the coaxial line in this picture, the setting up the hardline connectors, he and I built several different antennas. And back when we were into CB, which got us into amateur radio originally, because it's what generated our interest in radio, we actually built a giant ground plane antenna like the one you'll see me with a picture of. I hope we can dig some of those up, because that was our first co-phased build of an antenna together. And we've been...
I have fresh blades in my bag.
Appreciate it, but I've got them in the handle, yeah. So always got 3 or 4 in there in case I need them. Go back to 32 millimeters for this particular connector, which is right about the middle of the disc.
Operation Bait Chunks.
Why did I bring you guys along?
Yes.
For comic relief.
Alright, exactly. Now we do the flareage. Torque wrench for this.
I'll make the noise.
I didn't have another.
I'll do the sound effect.
Right, okay. Alright. I'll let you know when you're ready. Click, click, click. More clicks. And that's it.
One of the most important things you can do in radio antennas, feed lines, radio stations, etc. is grounding. So Dave is connecting grounding to the shielding of the coax right now. But what we do in a radio station is we ground the end of the cable where it connects to the radio. We ground the radio. We ground the coaxial cable. As it enters the radio shack, we ground it to the tower. And then all these common ground points reduce the possibility for stray voltages and stray currents to happen in places that we don't want them to happen. And if you look in this background here, you see that copper or bronze colored screening there. The whole inside of the shack is covered with that. And that is basically a Farad cage, what's called a Farad cage. It provides an electrical ground shield, just like you would have a building around something. This is a grounding cage around the radio shack. And that prevents any stray RF and static and all kinds of issues like that from occurring. The other thing that this does is prevent lightning strikes from building up theoretically, basically in forming a pathway all along the antenna, the coax, and the radio station with the ground. The theory being that you're discharging any potential lightning strikes by allowing a simple pathway to ground rather than allowing a huge voltage potential to build up and then arc across and cause a lightning strike.
This here is the new antenna to be installed. Just arrived. Actually, it's still being unpacked.
The logical pair is a red, black. And about on top of that fence where it's not going to roll downhill. Let's watch the Brad
Yeah,
go grab
leave some
the
slack here.
go. I know, Brad, go grab the top
Oh, yeah.
so it doesn't roll down the hill. Okay, there you go. Slacking you up. If these black flies would just frig off.
Freaking Peak skill? Oh, really?
Oh, Pico Portland.
You got it? Yep. All right, we're releasing. Look at. Okay, you got everything.
Ooh, squeaky.
You do exactly 38 pounds of 4 pounds of torque.
Click.
Okay, good. reflected.
K2 JLB testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On 805, there is no receive hooked up.
Okay. Looking really good now.
Okay. One more test.
Yep, go ahead.
K2 JLB testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, now let's